In this unit, we'll talk about the English used by Africans living in South Africa. The context and domains of use of English in South Africa by black learners is comparable to the use of English as a second language in other parts of the world. It is observed in South Africa that knowledge of English as a second language has increased twice as rapidly as that of Afrikaans. Afrikaans is the language of some local people of South Africa called Afrikaners. Afrikaners are an ethnic group in South Africa who are descendants of French, German, and Dutch settlers from the 17th century. Gradually, as these people came in contact with local African people and subsequently with African culture and languages, they developed a culture and language of their own. That language is called Afrikaans. And Afrikaans was once one of the most dominant languages of South Africa. But it is now observed that the knowledge of English as a second language has even surpassed the knowledge of Afrikaans. According to 1991 census, almost 45% of the population in South Africa claims to have a speaking knowledge of English. This also means that the population in South Africa have lots of other options, linguistic options available to them, and English is just one of the options available to them in their wide linguistic repertoire. Educational context is one of the most important contexts against which English is used. The knowledge or proficiency or quality of English that people attain is judged against the educational context, because it is through education that people are able to learn English in South Africa. So it is virtually learned by all black learners going to school in South Africa. The first 4 years of elementary school are in one of their first languages, which of course is one of the local African languages, and later on English is introduced. However, the teaching materials and the texts are said to be quite inappropriate, which of course affects the quality of teaching learning. Not only that, instruction is also carried on by native English teachers who themselves are not proficient enough in English, and all these things have an effect on the overall quality of English that is ultimately attained by the learners. In media, again, English is used to a large extent, but we see a lot of code switching taking place in media, especially when it is meant for a limited audience or for the local audience only. A lot of black urban slang is used in writing, again, writing which is meant for local readers. However, British or any standard English, in fact, is reserved for more serious domains, for example, politics. The example that we have here is an excerpt from a column. The readership is, of course, local, and therefore we see a lot of code switching that the writer has used. The excerpt starts with an African slang or an African phrase which means "hey gents." And then there are other phrases and words which are used. The words in this example which are in bold are from African language, one of the African languages. In some cases, for example, Salala and Njori, which means money and car, respectively, the meaning has been given in brackets, whereas there's no meaning given for the first phrase. So there's a lot of code switching between English and local languages that can be observed in South African media. Then there are also lots of ideological issues. It is seen as a language of oppressors, of course. South Africa was first a Dutch colony and later on a British colony. Although British had abolished slavery, still British are seen as oppressors, and English is considered a language of the oppressors. But paradoxically, it is also considered a language of liberation and resistance because it was through the use of English that South Africans were able to get their voice heard all over the world. And it is also looked as an instrument of black unity, perhaps because it is one language that people who speak different languages in South Africa can use to communicate with each other. We also see this ambivalence which is found in other parts of the world as well towards English, this mixed feeling of love and hate towards English, especially when the standard is considered British Standard English, which is a little difficult to attain, especially given the circumstances in which English is taught in schools in South Africa. So it is thought that English privileges a certain group of people, and therefore people look at it as a continuous instrument of oppression. So what is the solution? What should be done if on one hand English is needed and learned by people in Africa, South Africa, and on the other hand it is looked as an instrument which privileges only a certain class and leaves out certain other people? It seems the solution is that native Englishes should be acknowledged and should be given equal status or should be given equal prestige. The people who are only able to attain proficiency, which is one of the varieties, which is in one of the varieties of English used in South Africa, those varieties should be acknowledged, and the standard British English should not be considered the only available model. And perhaps in that way the ambivalence can be defeated, or more favorable sentiments can be people can have more favorable sentiments towards English in South Africa.